Hello and welcome to Into the Woods with Holly Wharton. This podcast is all about our journey into the woods of ourselves, getting to know who we are, where we are, and where we're going in life so that we can create the life that we want to live. It's about deepening your connection with yourself, taking inspired action, and really trusting yourself and your intuition. It's also about mindset. Our beliefs are such an important part of this journey. And there are so many ways for us to change our mindset so that we can more easily live a life of expansive joy. This podcast is also about going literally into the woods and spending time in nature, and how that can help us on our own personal journey of self-knowledge. Thank you so much for joining us today. Now let's get into this week's episode. Hello, adventurers, and welcome to the Into the Woods podcast, episode 466. This is your host, Holly Wharton, and I'm back with another exciting guest. Today, I'm talking with Vaishnavi Viswanathan. We originally met on Instagram, where Vaishnavi interviewed me last year. And we've had this podcast chat in the plans for almost a year now, and I'm really pleased that we finally made it happen. I hope it inspires you to connect with nature in new and joyful ways. We have some chats about forest bathing, which is probably one of the most commonly known methods of nature connection, but we also talk about different ways of connecting and reconnecting with nature. So who is Vaishnavi? She is a vagabond by heart and loves to explore life to the fullest. She loves to dabble in anything creative, play with dogs, spend time with family and friends, learn new things, watch movies, and generally to laze around and have fun, especially in nature. She's an entrepreneur and founder of 2 firms with 20 plus years of experience as a Leadership Skills Facilitator, Expressive Art Therapy practitioner, life coach, and a certified forest therapy practitioner. She's conducted over 3,000 leadership training programs in organizations. In her workshops and coaching, she combines her knowledge and experience from psychology, philosophy, art, and nature to provide a space for others to dive deep within to discover their authentic self. She's a proponent of conscious living and explores consciousness in as many aspects of her life. Her recent experiment with conscious pregnancy and birthing led to a pain-free labor and no-push delivery at the age of 40. And she is now exploring conscious parenting. She believes that connecting with nature has been an important aspect for her to live a conscious life as close to what nature intended it to be. So what are you going to learn in this week's episode? We talk about what is nature connection and why is it so important, the benefits of forest bathing and nature connection, why some people struggle to connect with nature, how you can reconnect with nature, and finally, why online nature events can be just as powerful. And I think this is a really important topic because during lockdown, a lot of people started doing more online events for obvious reasons. And I think a lot of people, myself included, kind of questioned how good they could be, because I think being out in nature is very much about the experience of being with people in nature. And that's not necessarily so. Vaishnavi has been doing a lot of online nature events with people all around the world where other people are getting out in nature. They're on their phones. They're being guided through this experience, and it's been really, really powerful. So stay tuned for that. So hope you find this episode interesting and useful. Hello, how are you doing today?
Hi, Holly. I'm doing good.
I'm really looking forward to our conversation, which we've had kind of on the books for a while, and it got a little bit delayed.
Yeah, so happy to be here.
Oh, I'm excited. So why don't you start out by telling us a little bit about who you are and what you do?
Okay. So in a nutshell, I think who I am is I'm a learner. I love to learn new things. And I like to give that back to other people who want to learn what I've experienced. So whether it be self-development, self-improvement, learning about nature, anything at all, I keep learning new things and support other people who'd like to learn the same things. And what I do, so currently I'm a new mother, so that's what I do most of my day. A lot of child rearing activities. But professionally, I usually conduct leadership workshops for corporate leaders. And that's what I've been doing for 20 plus years now. And along the way, I also enjoyed being a life coach. So I conduct one-on-one sessions for mostly entrepreneurs or corporate people who want to leave the corporate and live a life that they want to, which is in line with their purpose.
Nice.
And what really helps me to do that is connect with expressive arts. So I've done my diploma in expressive art therapy and also forest therapy. So I kind of combine both of these aspects, arts and nature, to get deeper into ourselves
Nice.
What I do.
Lovely. So what is nature connection? How would you describe it?
So nature connections is like a collaborative space of people who have a different kind of a connection with nature. What I mean by different kind is it's not at a cognitive level of knowing the names of trees or medicinal properties or names of birds and butterflies and all of that, but connecting with nature as a living being. And what we all do as collaborators is support other people to also connect with nature in that way. So there's a lot of intuitiveness involved in connecting with nature, and that's what we would like others to experience as much too. So whoever wants to experience it, we are there to support them and give them a space to do that.
Nice. So is nature connection kind of like forest bathing? Or is forest bathing one type of nature connection?
Yeah, so forest bathing is one of those things that one of the core things I would say that we like to do, because that's like a very simple way of connecting with nature. And it's all about connecting with the senses. And, once we connect with nature through our senses, then the other connections that we look at, the psychological level or at a spiritual level, all that kind of becomes a little easier, once our senses are opened up. And so forest bathing is just one of the so-called offerings.
Forest bathing has been getting a lot of media coverage in the last few years. It's kind of the trendy nature thing to do. What is forest bathing? How would you describe it?
So yeah, you're true. I think the past few years, it's really picked up traction now. And I think mostly it is because we've lost that connection with nature, which is just to be with nature. With phones coming in, the first thing we do is click 10,000 pictures of nature. Of course, that's one way of connecting with nature, but we are not in the moment. We are already planning to put it up on social media. Right? So forest bathing is to be in the moment with nature, to really open up all our senses of sight, smell, all our five senses. So I do believe like the senses is like the gateway to the soul. So forest bathing really opens us up to a different way of looking at nature. So I've had participants who've been to the same park, for example, maybe for 10 years, but then after a forest bathing walk, they'll be like, oh, I never saw this park in this way. So it's kind of a different way of connecting through our senses. And a lot of it deals with slowing down, being in silence with nature, and connecting from a very safe space, which is very simple to connect through our senses. So that's forest bathing.
Yeah, I feel like when I'm doing other things in nature, like walking or running or hiking, I'm kind of seeing the big picture of the landscape that I'm walking through. But when I do forest bathing, it's like I'm getting down into the details. Like you said, with all the different senses, like you're smelling, you're hearing, like you're focusing on each one and you're looking at all or experiencing all the details of that landscape.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the best part about this is there's no goal or agenda. It's not like you have to get it right. Just experience it. That's it. And it's fully experience based. So you just smell and enjoy. That's it, and you don't have to get the name right. You don't have to know what that smell smells like, all of that. Yeah, it's about getting down to the details. And sometimes it's also looking at the bigger picture. So we may look at the entire landscape and see how does that make us feel. And then we go down to maybe one flower or one leaf or a blade of grass. So yeah, we kind of, I think, zoom in and zoom out between the detail and the big picture, but being in the moment.
Yeah.
Not being in the future or the past.
And I think that's something that a lot of people really struggle with. And I think that's why mindfulness meditation has been so, again, such a big buzzword the last few years, just because we're so like, I have to do this, I have to do this, I have my to-do list, I have to check things off, I have to, I have to go here, I have to buy this. Like we're so busy and we're so rarely in the moment.
Absolutely. I think that's why forest bathing is kind of picking up the pace, because it's like a meditation, but with your eyes open. And there's movement involved. So a lot of people do find it very difficult to say, oh, I have to sit in one place and have no thoughts and all of that. It's like, no way, I'm still thinking of what I'm going to eat next and, what I'm going to cook next. Or, and for me now it's more with what my baby will eat and what, so a whole lot of things going on in our head, right? So even for me to just sit still is a little difficult now. But in nature, I think nature is like, that's why I guess we call her Mother Nature. It just allows us to be, in full acceptance for who we are. We don't have to prove ourselves. We don't have to do something. It could just be lying down on the grass, and we feel absolutely at home and in the moment. So I guess you're right, in terms of forest bathing becoming one of the most in thing is because we are so distracted and there's so much to do. And yeah, social media and phones is adding to the distractions.
Yes. And I think that's really important what you said about how it allows us to just be. Because as we just said, like we're so busy doing that we're not often just being. And that's a huge part of being present.
Yeah, absolutely. It's so, and it's difficult to do that in the world, which is so focused on growth and to keep doing something new and innovative. And if you have a business, it is difficult, of course, to just be. Yeah. So usually forest bathing walks are around 2 to 3 hours. So it helps people to give a glimpse to just be, which is difficult to do in our daily life because there's always, like you said, a to-do list as an adult. I think these forest bathing walks give them, it's like a vacation, so you can do it every day, you can do it weekly, depending on where you are. So you don't need to practice being in the moment all throughout 24/7, but at least take these 2 3 hours in a week to do it. That's also great.
So what are the benefits of nature connection and forest bathing? I mean, we talked about some of them, but how has it changed people's lives, the people that you've worked with?
The experiences that people have and the benefits that people get is highly customized to each individual. That's why we say nature is the coach or nature is the therapist, because each one gets what they need at that moment in life, whatever we do. I mean, it could be the same activity that 15 people are doing, but each one would have a different experience. But overall, what research has also shown, which has been ongoing for several decades now, is that it has a lot of benefit in terms of, let's say, physiologically. There is a lot of benefit in terms of your blood pressure being in check. Your heart rate slows down. So they say our parasympathetic nervous system is activated, which basically is happening when you are resting or when you're sleeping, which helps the body to work with relaxation. So there's a lot of benefits at a physiological level. In fact, people have noticed that even when they, let's say, are wounded, and when they're spending time in nature, the wound heals faster. Not at a physical level. It could be a cut in your finger. So physically, there's a lot of benefit that one derives. Then there's also psychological benefits. A lot of people have experienced a sense of belonging when they're out in nature. So people who are struggling with depression, loneliness, or even anger, all of that kind of calms down a little more. At least it comes down a few notches, depending on how often people would go out in nature. And a lot of people experience a sense of, just feeling expansive, while being humbled in presence of nature. And that's why some people also have some amount of spiritual connection. So some people are inspired. There are people I've done walks for where there's one person who came up and said, oh, I suddenly remembered I used to write poetries when I was a kid and I've totally lost connect with that. And I'm going to start writing again. So there's inspiration, or people understand what they want to do in life. Like each one gets something different. But we say that whatever said and done, you will be benefited. There is no one who's not going to get any benefit. If nothing, people will be relaxed. That's a guarantee. You will feel rejuvenated. Okay. So we always say that we can guarantee you will feel rejuvenated, you will feel relaxed. But beyond that is all brownie points, but you will get something.
So how did you get into nature connection? Were you always a nature lover? Did you always love getting outdoors?
Not as much. I mean, yes, I do. I did like hiking and camping and all of those things when I was in college. But I wouldn't say I'm like this huge nature enthusiast kind of a person. I'm like a city person, who's been living in cities since childhood. So I did Akashic record around 6-7 years back. And that's where it said that it was a very cryptic reading, which said that I need to connect people. Yeah. That's like, she was like, so my spiritual coach was like, you need to connect people with the energies of trees and help even organizations and kids to do it. And I'm like, what does that really mean? And I don't even know the names of trees. How could I be doing that? So there was a lot of resistance in the beginning, saying, I'm not going to start something new. I don't know much about nature. So I love nature. I love trees, but that's about it. So there was resistance. And then I had a lovely coach who worked with me. And it's like the universe never stops, right? Till we do what we're meant to do.
Yeah.
So the coach just somehow appeared like an angel, and she kind of guided through all the resistance that I had, the fears that I had, and how I could integrate that with the work that I've already been doing.
Mm-hmm.
And that's how it all started off. So I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't even know there was something called as forest bathing at that moment. So it's only when I started doing, after I got the reading, I started exploring nature intuitively, and started doing things that forest bathing does. And then I'm like, oh, there are a whole lot of other people doing crazy stuff like this, I'm not only one. And that's when I started connecting with local people and got my certification done.
Lovely. So for someone who wants to get started connecting with nature, how can they get started? How can they start reconnecting?
So there are obviously several ways that people connect to nature, and they're already doing it knowingly or unknowingly. If someone wants to consciously do it, depends on what really excites them. For some people, the curiosity to know about how birds live or the other kind of birds that are there around their house, that gives them a lot of joy. So they could do that. They could go for birding walks and all of that. Some people, it is about connecting with nature through actually doing some activity in nature, weaving, some kind of clay work, pottery, all of that. Even cooking. I mean, some people enjoy cooking, so they could actually connect, because even fruits and vegetables are nothing but nature.
Yeah.
So people can connect to that. And at a psychological, spiritual level, there is forest bathing, there's forest therapy. So there are like different ways that you could just be with nature. And you could all of it also.
I think that's a really important thing to point out, because there are so many different ways to connect with nature. And it's not just going and sitting in silence with a tree. Like, yes, that's going to work for some people, and some people are going to love it. But some people are going to want to go wild swimming or go for a walk or be moving in nature. And I think that can be just as beneficial.
Yeah, absolutely. I guess for me, a balance is what's healthy to have. So as much as I love, let's say some people might love jogging in a park or running, doing that at the same time, as the cliche goes, stop to smell the flowers. So can I do both? Can I go for a walk or a jog without being mindful of what's around me, but enjoying the nature space and the energy? But at the same time, can I also take out time to just sit back, relax, and smell those roses?
Yeah. I think that's really important. When I first got back into trail running, I was very strict with myself. I'm going to go for a run, and I'm going to run the whole time until I get back home. And then I got to the point where it was like, but there's a pretty flower and I want to take a picture of it. So now I just stop. If I see a nice view, I stop and take a picture. If I see a pretty flower, I stop and take a picture of the flower. Like, I'm not as strict with myself. Like, I'm paying attention to what's going on around me. And if I want to stop and look at it, I will stop and smell the flowers.
That's so beautiful. And I think that's wonderful, right? Because this is what is, reminding me of the fact that this helps us to be situationally aware of our surroundings, and either not take it for granted or not miss out the chance to really enjoy it. So I think what you shared was quite important, to saying that, I need to be aware of where I am. And I think the deeper levels of connection is why a lot of us are propagating now, because most of us are disconnected to an extent that people destroying nature does not seem to impact a lot of us. We become numb to it. So like they say, if you really care for something, you would not want it to be destroyed. So I could be jogging or going hiking, but I may still not care for nature as much. So people would throw trash, people would, I don't know, just be impolite to nature when they are camping. So
absolutely,
that's why I guess forest bathing and forest therapy is coming into the forefront, and also realizing that the health of nature is directly proportionate to our own health, physical health, mental health, emotional health, psychological health. All of it is so interrelated. And the more we are disconnected with nature, the external nature, that much we are disconnected with our internal nature. So that's another benefit that many people get, is when I connect with nature, I feel more connected to myself.
Yes, absolutely. Yes. Yeah, I was just thinking as you were talking, it's kind of like when you're walking in a city and you're walking down the street and you pass all these people and you don't really know them. It's like you register that there are people there, but you don't know them. But then every once in a while, you'll meet someone, you'll have a conversation and you get to know them. Forest bathing and nature connection is kind of like that. It's like, instead of just walking through the nature and just recognizing that it's there, it's like you're getting to know it on a friendly level.
Yeah. Oh, wow. That's really well put. Holly. Yeah. It's like instead of being acquaintances, you're actually
Yes.
becoming friends.
Yes.
And the more time you spend, the more beneficial it is to have that relationship,
Yeah.
because you're there for each other.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's
That's
like
well
forming a
said.
relationship. So do you ever meet people who struggle to connect with nature?
So there are few as compared to the number of people who don't struggle, because most of the people who do come for these walks are people who already are connected to nature
Hmm.
or who love nature or who want to experience different things with nature. But the few who do come sometimes come with the expectation that it'll be similar to a trek, or it'll be similar to knowing the history of trees in that location or the medicinal properties of
Hmm.
plants. At the same time, people who do start the walk realize that they struggle with something like slowness or
Hmm.
silence, because that's something that is in a very unfamiliar territory. Our life existence is all about killing boredom. We should not sit still. So they find it difficult to slow down. So usually we talk about it in the beginning of the walk, or at least I talk about saying that it may happen and it's okay. It's
Hmm.
fine. There's nothing wrong in it. So,
Hmm.
yeah, those are the things that usually people struggle with. People also struggle with understanding the experience because you can't articulate it. It's not tangible.
Yeah.
It's not something you take away home and tell someone this is what happened, because it's a very experiential thing. So, people who are, especially in the corporate world, where they want something tangible, take away, and they know the do's and don'ts, or they have some model or theory
Yeah.
to work with, if that's not there, they feel groundless. So
Yeah.
they also struggle to really get this.
Yeah. There's no structure to it.
Yeah. So that's why forest bathing helps, because there is a structure, there's a framework, and somehow people get that.
Yeah. Good. So you've also done online events in Nature Connection. What was that like?
Oh, that was such an eye opener. I think the pandemic really busted a lot of myths that we have.
Hmm.
So earlier it used to be like technology and nature are poles apart. you know Technology doesn't help connecting with nature, it only disconnects us with nature and all of that. But pandemic, I think, showed us that no, they can be married, they can work together. I guess what my learning has been is that intention is more important than what we actually do.
Mm-hmm.
What is our intent, and how am I embodying whatever we are doing in online workshops. So
Hmm.
it can't be a teaching piece or a lecture piece. It's more of experiencing.
Mm-hmm.
If I have experienced that myself and I'm living it in my body. And yeah, I think that was what was important. And then when we were able to do whatever we did, people would connect in their own ways. So it
Nice.
won't be in a proper forest bathing format, because forest bathing is about being out in nature. One of the basic things is the physiological aspect, which is the
Hmm.
chemicals that are emitted by
Yeah.
trees, the negative ions in water, all of that impacts us. It's like that aromatherapy kind of thing. So without that, online, I really expect. But at the same time, I've recently been able to do forest bathing walks, even online, which was
Nice.
quite interesting. So we had people in their own nature spaces across the world, and I was giving them the activities from here. So they would be on their phone, they would listen to the instructions, and then they would switch off their video and do the connection and come back and share. So it was
Nice.
beautiful when we could have people in different spaces doing it.
Wow, that's
So
lovely.
yeah, so online works too in some ways. Of course, physically being present really impacts differently, but online also seemed to go deeply into body work, into artwork with nature, and it didn't matter who it was. I mean, there was one online session we were doing for LinkedIn employees, and we had their kids join in, and kids were enjoying,
Wow.
and we were creating mandalas and doing
Wow.
creative work with nature, and the entire family was doing it online. So I think online really opened up the boundaries, as well as opened up our own thoughts of what nature is. So for me also,
Yeah.
earlier the definition of nature was nice mountainous forest. But then doing these sessions, I realized, hey, nature is there right behind me. There's a plant, and
Yeah.
then there's onions, and that's nature, and then
Yeah.
there is our own body.
So is there anything else that you'd like to share to encourage people to go out on their own and connect with nature?
So I think a lot of people doubt forest bathing or
Yeah.
forest therapy as an experience, especially most people who believe that they already are connected with nature or they love nature. They don't need something like this. They can do it on their own. I would say just give it a try. Just once, just experience it, just experiment with it. Because a lot of times when we do it on our own, it may not be the same as when someone who's an expert who can guide us and who sets the pace for us. So even when I am, for example, doing my own connection work, my own forest bathing walk, I might tend to do it faster, but when I have someone else guiding me, automatically give myself permission to go slower than what I would on my own. So I think that would be my suggestion, especially for people who already are nature enthusiasts. I see a lot of resistance coming from communities which prefer only going for bird walks or knowing about insects and trees and all of it. I would say more for those people, just experience this form of connecting with nature just to see if that works for you.
Yeah.
So that you can combine both.
Yep. Okay. And so how can people find you online and learn more about what you do?
So we are quite active on Instagram and on Facebook. We still are not there on Twitter as much. But yeah, they can just find us as Nature Connections India.
Okay.
Though we're doing a lot of work in India, we hope to do more outside India too. And online ones are obviously open for everyone. So we do have people coming from across the world for those. So you can just follow us on Instagram or on Facebook, and yet to be updated website is natureconnections.in. And you can feel free to just see what we did in the past. And there's a lot that we've done after that in the past 2 years. So hopefully you get to update that this year.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much for joining us today and talking about nature connection. I think it's such an important topic, but it's also very confusing for people who don't know what it means, because it sounds like just a big topic.
Yeah, that's so true. And thanks a lot, Holly. It was really fun. And I always get to learn something new and some insights and aha moments, with our conversation. So it was really good. Thanks for time.
All right. Thank you. Please drop me a line and let me know what you thought of this week's episode. You can email me at holly@hollywharton.com or find me online and get in touch there. If you enjoyed this episode, you might want to check out these related shows. 401, I talk about how to forge a deeper connection with plants and trees. 398, I speak with Cara Wilde about opening up to connecting with other realms. 394, I speak with Sanit Kaur about plant spirit healing. 392, I talk with Carrie-Ann McKenzie about normalizing tree communication. 381, I talk with Helen Forster about how getting outdoors can help us release creative blocks. Thank you so much for listening. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe if you haven't already, and stay tuned for next week's episode. Remember to visit hollywharton.com/466 for the show notes on this episode. Thank you very much, and happy trails. Thanks so much for listening to Into the Woods with Holly Wharton. You can find more information about today's episode, including links for topics that were discussed, at hollywharton.com. That's HOLLYWORTON.com. If you'd like to connect with other listeners and get support on your journey, I would love for you to join my private community on Patreon. That's patreon.com/Holly Wharton. That's patreon.com/Holly Wharton. Thank you so much for listening, and I look forward to seeing you next week.